The protagonist of the tale is a man named Gary Johnson who leads a routine, unremarkable life. Gary teaches philosophy and psychology at universities, but beneath his serious exterior, he is a multi-talented individual. However, he works with the police and takes part in undercover operations, where he captures criminal suspects who want to hire a fictitious hitman. However, when Gary is unintentionally assigned to portray a phony hitman himself, his life abruptly changes. Gary accepts this new, risky position. Notwithstanding his nervousness about taking on the role of his friend Jasper, who was suspended for misbehavior, Rel Ainley accepted it. Jasper provides Gary with tips on how to play a hitman convincingly. Above all, don't show any weakness and act with assertiveness and ruthlessness. Jasper goes so far as to recommend that Gary change his avatar and attire to fit his new, menacing image. Billy. From the beginning, Gary goes to his first appointment with a client named Craig in a nearby cafe. Gary gives his best during his performance, portraying himself as a heartless murderer. His menacing and aggressive threats, such as chopping off fingers and hurling them out of a moving car window, leave Craig clearly rattled and believe he is in the company of a skilled killer. Soon later, the cops show up and take Craig into custody. Gary is shocked at how convincing Craig was after his first assignment. Gary's buddies Claude and Phil congratulate him on his accomplishment, admitting that Gary is a natural fit for the position. From this point on, Gary begins to hone his techniques. He picks up accents, studies makeup techniques, and totally commits to his new life as a fictitious hitman while keeping up his day job as a professor. He begins to see this side project as something more than a job. It's practically a way of life. He even modifies his fees according to how affluent his clients appear, taking cash or sporadic gifts like video games or boats as recompense. One day, Gary reconnects with his ex-girlfriend Alicia, a close friend, despite the fact that she's pregnant with another man's child. When they get together to catch up, the topic of how individuals change with age comes up. Gary and Alicia agree after Alicia's remarks, and they talk about his peculiar work, even though Gary is growing accustomed to playing the part of a phony hitman. Shortly after Gary replaces Jasper, who lost his position due to prior blunders, as the police's undercover hitman, permanently, Alicia pushes him to consider his future and possibly even find a life partner. When a woman called Madison contacts Gary, who is now going by the alias, to get him to kill her husband, that presents Gary with his next big challenge. When Ron first meets Madison, he doesn't take advantage of her desperate situation. Instead, he finds himself surprisingly attached to her. Gary suggests that Madison utilize her money to buy a property or move out of town in order to leave her bad marriage. When his co-workers learn that Gary let her go, they become enraged, especially Claude and Phil, but they also have to admit that they kind of like the calm, confident Ron that he has taken on. Gary keeps up his dual life as a professor and a hitman up until Madison sends him an invitation to a dog show one day. Gary accepts to meet her under his alias, even though he doesn't like dogs. Although Madison is taken aback to find the hitman at this kind of gathering, their talk reveals that a great deal has changed in her life since their last encounter. She's enjoying living in a new home and exploring new things. As they become closer, they eventually share a private moment together that evening, and their connection develops into something more. After that, Gary's life takes on a new direction. He continues to work as an undercover agent and teach, but he also finds solace in spending time with Madison, with whom he develops a sincere bond. He visits Madison's residence at night and even teaches her how to shoot. During the day, he continues to work as an undercover police officer, even though he faces dangers in his line of work. That night, Gary begins to think that maybe, just maybe, he has found something genuine in Madison. On their night out, Gary and Madison go to a nightclub where they enjoy dancing till midnight. To Madison's amazement, Gary inadvertently displays his geeky side when she discovers she's dating not just a killer but also a genius. They meet Rye, Madison's ex-husband, as they are leaving the club. He is with a buddy. In an effort to prevent a confrontation, Gary pushes Madison aside when Rye tries to approach her, but Ray keeps pushing, so Gary, now adopting the persona of the hitman, draws a gun and tells Rye to back off. In order to stop more trouble, Ray's friend intervenes and holds Ray back. Madison is delighted that Gary stood up for her because no one had done so before. Afterwards, they enjoyed a plate of ice cream while unwinding at a cafe. Gary saw Jasper at the same cafe, unexpectedly. Jasper came over and greeted Madison and Gary. Gary is terrified that Jasper will divulge his secret, but to his relief, Jasper acts as though he doesn't know Madison and doesn't expose Gary's true identity. Madison, nevertheless, grows skeptical since she feels like something about the interaction is strange. Gary receives an unexpected assignment the following day from a new, unidentified customer, and he is uncertain of how to handle the matter. Gary chooses to go to a cafe to meet the customer. Unaware that he's talking to Gary, the client turns out to be Rye Madison's ex-husband, much to his surprise. Rye wants Gary to kill the man Madison is dating after expressing his displeasure with her new relationship. Rye looks at Gary, and as a result, he panics and runs away. Gary is shaken by the weird interaction he had for the first time with a client. As Jasper's mistrust of Gary grows, he approaches him and asks him about the incident. Gary dismisses it, saying the client was simply afraid. Jasper, though, isn't quite persuaded and keeps an eye on Gary. Afterwards, Gary tells Madison about Ray's unsettling wish to kill her. Madison is unaffected by his advice to leave town for her protection because she believes her tough boyfriend would look out for her. When the police tell Gary that Rye was shot during a drug deal, they begin to suspect Madison because of her recent confrontation with Rye. Gary tries to continue teaching. Even worse, they think the man who walked out of the club with Gary may have something to do with Rye's demise as well. Eager to learn more, Jasper persuades Gary to look into Madison's new lover. When they go to the nightclub where Madison and Gary had danced, not knowing it's Gary himself, Jasper starts to piece things together and soon figures out that Gary is the man who is seeing Madison. Gary tries to brush it off, acting like it was just a coincidence, but when Gary and Madison meet again, Jasper is still not convinced. She reveals shocking information, saying she killed her ex-husband because she thought Rye would kill her first. After being shocked by this realization and growing weary of lying to Madison, Gary tells her who he really is. Madison is stunned by the labyrinth of dishonesty and cannot say anything. Gary leaves her determined to clean up the mess while Madison, the main suspect in Ray's murder, is being pursued by the police. In an attempt to reveal Gary's complicity and get back his former position, Jasper devises a scheme to question her without telling Gary. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Gary gets ready for the questioning by alerting Madison to the fact that they are being filmed and telling her to accompany him if she wants to survive. Madison's innocence was eventually established by them both as they put on a convincing show that won over the cops. But that night, their problems were far from done. At Madison's house, Jasper waits for Gary, sure that soon he gets there, Gary will come back. The two have a heated discussion as they sit down. Jasper uses blackmail to get Gary to return to his previous employment and give him a piece of Madison's ex-husband's sizable insurance payment. Jasper rambles on, growing progressively inebriated unbeknownst to him. Madison had added a dangerous number of medicines to his drink to tamper with it, thinking that as Jasper grows more capable, he will reveal them. Gary comes up with a terrifying scheme in which he stages Jasper's death to appear like a drug overdose and suffocates him by covering his head with a plastic bag. The pair craft a fake story, making it appear that Jasper committed suicide in his automobile after consuming narcotics. Their belief is that they can get away with it because nobody loves Jasper. Following the incident, Gary and Madison declared their love for one another. They went back to their lives, Gary embracing his confidence in his hitman and, as a teacher, relieved that the case was concluded. Persona non, the story ends on a good one as Gary and Madison settle into a normal existence, eventually having a child and living together in peace.